This is the Hype Squad with Charli McConnell, a podcast where women can be full of themselves and brag about what they're good at. Each week, we're going to bring you conversations covering topics like motherhood, life, relationships, business, and everything in between, because anything is possible with your very own Hype Squad. What's up, ladies? Welcome back to the Hype Squad. I'm Charli McConnell, your host. And today we have Amy Nabors on. Amy is an Enneagram coach dedicated to helping teams and individuals uncover their strengths, reduce stress, and live with purpose. Drawing from her own journey of overcoming burnout, she empowers clients to break patterns, build healthier rhythms, and create more peaceful, productive workplaces and joy-filled lives. Amy's mission is to help others thrive with purpose and peace. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited you're here. Amy and I've been chatting for 20 minutes at this point, and I was like, okay, we have to start recording. Otherwise, we're going to run out of time. I'm so excited to talk more about your coaching business and just
Thank
all
you.
of your story. So welcome. Tell me a little bit about, well, first, let's just what's an Enneagram coach?
So, an Enneagram coach is someone who's trained in the, for lack of a better word, personality tool of the Enneagram.
Okay.
And so, the Enneagram is very different than other personality frameworks like the DISC or the Myers-Briggs because it helps you identify those core motivations that are why you do what you do, which is very different than telling you, okay, you have these behavior patterns, so you are in this box.
Right.
And so the Enneagram is very different than that because you're looking at your core motivations. And so, like, a good friend of mine and I, we have a lot of the same behavior characteristics, but we're very different in why we have those behavior characteristics. So we're different types.
Yeah.
But once you understand that, and the great thing is within the Enneagram, you're not stuck in a box of your type because you are connected to other types. So you can actually take on the unhealthy characteristics of those types or the healthy character. When you're in growth, you're taking on the healthy characteristics of those types you're connected to. And so that is huge. You're not just like, oh, well, sorry about your luck. You're a C on the disc and that's just what you are. But no, you can take on the healthy characteristics of the types that your type is connected to. And so it just makes, for me personally, it has just made a huge difference in understanding myself better because once you can name it, like if I have a conversation during the day and I go home and I'm like, it's like playing in my mind.
Yeah.
I can be like, why did I say that? Why? Okay, wait. I was reacting out of my core fear, which is my deepest insecurity. Okay, I didn't need to react out of my core fear. So you can really work on it because you understand why. Because really, why is the deepest question we need to ask about everything if we're going to change and grow.
Yeah.
And so that's why I love the Enneagram. It's just expansive, I guess is a good word, rather than just putting you in a box and saying, oh, well, you're a C on the disc and that's just what you are and you're rigid and you this. Enneagram doesn't leave you stuck there.
Yeah. Well, I'm familiar with multiple personality style tests just from a degree in psychology, but also if you've worked in a place of business with an HR department, for the most part, you've taken some sort of personality
Right.
test because it is a great tool, depending on
Right.
which one you're using, of just understanding putting teams together and who's going to lead these teams the best and making sure you're building from the jump the best you can.
Right.
And Enneagram, it's so interesting because when you and I first met, and we'll kind of dive into that in a minute, Enneagram is it's trendy, right? You see a lot of stuff on Instagram and social media platforms of people saying, well, I am a six, so I do this. Or you can relate, like, this is the behavior of a six. Or you'll see all of these cute little carousels of number specific personality traits.
Right.
And so it kind of reminds me of the trendiness of horoscopes a little bit, where you'll see people once they know their number, they can go down this really,
Yeah.
big spiral about the number.
Yes.
But what I found really interesting, and you mentioned it just a second ago, was how did you say it in stress and growth? So in stress and growth, you have different like variants of your number that will
Right.
show up for you, which was really enlightening for me to
Yes.
understand. Because even when I first, before we met, you sent me this great packet of all the details of just kind of bullet points. And I was like, well, none of these, I feel like that every day.
Right.
I can relate to multiple of these. And so that made a lot more sense to me when you said that in our call, which was, okay, that's why I relate to multiple of these.
Yes.
And I actually had taken like a free quiz online years ago. And when you and I met, I was like, well, it said I was a 3 like years ago. I have no idea what that means. And then you and I, with a great presentation that you had over a call, went through in detail every number. And I'm like, oh, wait, I don't know if that is me. Like this
Yes.
one feels more me, which was such a refreshing and tailored approach to it as opposed to just like filling out a questionnaire
Right.
online. I really loved how you did that.
And that's one of the things. There is a lot of I wouldn't say a lot of contingent. There's a wide array of opinions
Mm-hmm.
through Enneagram teachers, especially the Enneagram teachers. Oh, sorry. What on earth?
Siri is showing up for the call.
Yeah, on a watch. I may have to take that off. Let's see. So that doesn't do it again. But there's a wide array of opinions
Sure.
on whether or not you should take an online assessment for the
Mm-hmm.
Enneagram. And from teachers who have been teaching this for like 40, 50 years, like they don't all agree on it. And I lean toward not taking an online assessment
Mm-hmm.
for the Enneagram simply because of that very reason. Like if someone is not, well, first of all, if they're not self-aware enough,
Mm-hmm.
the Enneagram is not the fun. I mean, it's not the feel good when you're
Mm-hmm.
learning your type
Mm-hmm.
because it will make you cringe I mean,
Uh-huh.
most of the time when you start looking at those like in stress characteristics of your type, you're going to cringe.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started learning about the Enneagram about 12 years ago, I'd seen, I've always loved personality stuff. I really should have switched my major to psychology in college because I
Mm-hmm.
was introduced to the Myers-Briggs. And then I was like, oh, how does this know me so well? Right? And so that really should have been my first clue to switch majors. But I've always studied Enneagram. If there is not Enneagram, it's personalities. Like if there is a quiz that pops up online,
Mm-hmm.
what Disney princess are you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take
Mm-hmm.
it. Like it's just interesting. But 12 years ago when I started studying the Enneagram, I was seeing people talk about it online and I found, someone who she was really into it and she recommended just a basic Enneagram book. I downloaded it on my Kindle. I read the first chapter, which is like an intro chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read the next chapter, which at the time I was not willing to admit was my type. And I was like, oh, I cannot be that. I can't be that way.
Yeah.
No, that's not me. Like, and so I shut that book on my Kindle and I've never
Mm-hmm.
opened it since. And I have like probably 50 Enneagram books at this point.
Yeah.
And I was like, because it was just like, it's not comfortable to
Mm-hmm.
admit, oh, yeah, I can be very critical and judgmental when I'm not in a good place. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's but that's also the beauty of it is, oh, but look, when I'm growing,
Yeah.
I take on these characteristics. I can be more spontaneous. I can, you know, be more creative and stuff like that. And so that's why I really love the Enneagram. And so it's not, but get back to my point with online assessments is it's not, they can be wrong.
Yeah.
And even Enneagram teachers I know who have online assessments on their sites, they're like, you need to study further.
Yeah.
You don't need to just take this as gospel
Mm-hmm.
because online assessments are wrong 25 to 35% of the time for any. I've heard that range for Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know people who are like, they'll just take it, oh, I'm this. And then I'll work with them and they're like, oh no, I'm not that type.
Exhibit A
I was not that
for
type.
me. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think about like online quizzes though. Everyone wants like an immediate answer. They
Yes.
want to be able to, on a whim, what's my Enneagram, find out within minutes, and then go on a spiral of learning all about it. And I understand because that was me too. But also, I am severely ADD and not always super honest about who I actually am on paper, and I'm not special. Like that's a pretty
Oh, yeah.
standard approach. And so I'm either going to get bored of the quiz and I'm going to just start half-assing the answers, or I'm going to answer it in a way of someone's going to read this and I want to look good, right?
Exactly.
I don't want to like be
Exactly.
self-deprecating. I don't want to be
Yes.
honest about how I
Right.
actually am. This is how I want to be.
Right.
So I'm going to put that in an ideal world. This is how I am. And so I think it's always kind of skewed in that way.
Yes.
But I do remember when it first showed up as a 3 for me, I did not totally relate to that. But I was just like, okay, sure. And I've got some friends who are super into Enneagram. And if I say something about, and at the time I was like, well, I'm a 3. And they're like, oh, of course you are. Like, that's what a 3 would say. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Right. And so there are people out there, the same thing with Myers-Briggs and all of these things. I remember there was a group that I was a part of where everyone introduced themselves with their horoscope, their rising, and all their like moons and such and planets. I don't know. Their Myers-Briggs assessment, their Enneagram, and there was one more. And I'm like, I don't understand what any of these things mean. Like, I know my own, but like if you
Yeah.
start INFJing me, I don't know what you're talking about, right? Or a manifesting generator, or like I don't,
Right.
I'm like, that's
Yeah.
great. I don't know what that means. But I think for me, I would have said the same thing, like an online quiz, just do the online quiz. But then when I actually had the experience of meeting with you and going through it in detail with a tailored approach, it it was very, very different. I had more of an idea. And there were moments where because you went through the presentation, you were like, does any of this, you relate to any of this? And I'm like, oh, kind of like, I don't want to like put myself on blast, but yeah. And so it almost felt like, a safer, more secure way for me to decipher what I actually was without having to put it on paper. I
Yes.
could listen to your um, detailed definitions of them and say to myself without being put on blast, oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that might be me,
Right. And
right?
I mean, that really is the best approach is to learn about all the types and
Mm-hmm.
just sit with it.
Mm-hmm.
We do live in a microwave world. They want, everybody, I mean, I want stuff right now,
Right.
like, but it's such a internal
Mm-hmm.
reflection
Mm-hmm.
that it is much better just to sit with it and just like, oh, does this sound like me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Am I really doing it? Like, am I, like as like a 3, like, am I really doing this because I want this to be successful or I want to be seen as successful?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can dive into subtypes and that takes it another level deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, even subtypes within there's like 3 subtypes to every type. They're going to, that yes, they have that same core motivation, but it's going to look different for each one of them.
Right.
And so it is very nuanced. And I'm just, I'm more of a take things slowly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't process things really fast. I process much slower. And I feel like we rush too much and it causes us extra stress just in
Mm-hmm.
life in general.
Yeah.
And so I take the approach. I don't recommend taking an online test, but if you do, just know it's just a starting point.
Yeah.
It is not gospel. It is not the end all be all. And honestly, if people aren't interested in going deeper into it, I don't
Yeah.
recommend they taste
Don't
test.
even start the
Don't even
path.
start it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really is helpful. And not to mention, like when you learn about all the other types, you have a lot more compassion and grace for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, we still all get in our humanity and like,
Sure.
people drive us crazy. But for me, I was able to learn a lot more self grace and compassion
Mm-hmm.
because then, I'm an Enneagram 1. And so I was like, well, I've always had this inner critic, and everyone has an inner critic. But for Enneagram 1s, it is really, really loud. It's like they have a megaphone in their ear and all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And for so long, I thought that was my identity.
Yeah.
But then when I started learning about the Enneagram, I was like, okay, I can be good enough. I am good enough. Like I am
Mm-hmm.
good. Because Enneagram 1, our core fear is being bad or corruptible or
Mm-hmm.
not good enough.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, that inner voice is not the truth of who I
Yeah.
am. That's not my identity. Okay. And it took me most of my life to get there, and figure that out. And so it just helps. And we all have different aspects of a lot of the types.
Mm-hmm.
I identify with like 5 of the type,
Right.
with like behavior characteristics and even the core motivations, but one is your
Top
top
tier. Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
That is the one, your main one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very eye opening. I think there's something so powerful about naming
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's why I did what I did.
You said that earlier. You said something in reference of like having a moment with someone and then going back and saying, "Oh, I was in stress, so that's why I showed up this way." And I think that is the coolest part of it to me is understanding, "Oh, I'm not losing my mind or I'm not going to beat myself up for my reaction. Yes, I'm not happy with it. I'm not proud of it, but I can understand where it came from,
Yes.
where the core motivation came from, why I felt triggered, what in this scenario happened to where I can like zoom out and look at it from a meta perspective to say, oh, I see the whole picture. Because it is
Yes.
really hard when we are not happy with the way we showed up or a decision we made to not let that derail
Right.
everything. And the more you can know yourself in whatever capacity that looks like, whether it's personality test or otherwise, the more insight you have to why you do the things you do
Right.
or why you are triggered. Everyone talks about being like a big T, little t triggered. But I do think that if you don't know what the things are that are triggering you to be able to identify them and why you
Right.
react, you think you are like losing your mind,
Exactly.
right? Or that you're overreacting about
Exactly.
everything. And it's really difficult to have growth or evolution in any capacity until you identify those things.
Yes. And when and then that's the other great thing. And that's why I also love working with the Enneagram with teams,
Mm-hmm.
because when you can understand, oh, that's going to trigger her,
Mm-hmm.
or that's going to trigger me, you can put boundaries
Yeah.
in place. You can put safeguards in place to try to help you. I've had instances where people would question, I would be trying to help them. Like as an
Mm-hmm.
Enneagram 1, I want to make things better.
Yeah.
And I would be trying to help them and make something better. And they were just like, like brush me
Mm-hmm.
off. And when I realized that it's because I didn't feel like I was good enough, or they didn't think I was thinking, granted, wrong thinking.
Right.
I was thinking they were thinking I wasn't good enough for
Mm-hmm.
that. Okay, that's a trigger for me.
Yeah.
So when I understand that now, when I'm in the, situation like that, I can step back
Mm-hmm.
and go, take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
That's a trigger. You don't have to react that way, and so you get better
Yeah.
as you go
Yeah.
along. And if you reflect, and sometimes you don't reflect in the moment, it has to be
Mm-hmm.
later. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but that's why it's so great to use it with teams. And it's funny, you said earlier where you had friends said, oh, yes, that's so 3. And that's I have a few rules around the Enneagram that I share with groups when I do, team coachings. And it's, you never tell someone what
Yeah.
their type is, and you never use it in that way. Now, are there times I want to use it?
Sure.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, there are times where I have a lot of friends who are type 9s,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I want to go, you realize you're acting like a type 9, like, but I don't. Like, you don't want to use it as a sword against
Mm-hmm.
someone else, and you don't want to use it as an excuse for your own behavior.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is, don't ever tell someone else their type, because it is such a vulnerable thing to decide your type that you can really confuse a person.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, of the people teams I've worked with, of individuals I've worked with, helping them determine their type. And even I can't tell them, oh, yes, this is, I mean, when
Yeah.
we met, I couldn't tell you what your type was.
Yeah. You're not a magician. You
No,
don't just like,
I could
yeah.
guide you to it. I could
Sure.
ask you questions. But I would say 25 to 35% of the time, I've had people either say, well, I took this test and it told me I was this, and I took this other test and it told me I was this, or so and so told me I was this, or so and so told me I was this. and they were all wrong.
Wrong. Yeah.
And so that's kind of one of my big pet peeves is
Yeah.
never tell. And because you do look different in growth and in stress, you look like another type.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Okay, so mine is, what did I come? I think I said I was a 6 with a 3 and a 9, depending. I'll have to go back and look.
yeah, 3
But
and 9 are 3, 6, and 9s are each their growth and stress paths with
or
each
maybe
other.
it was a
So
3 and then I was a 6 or 9, 6 in growth, 9 in stress. I'd have to go back and look. And I have the word chameleon. Was that one of the words?
that 3s can be very much a chameleon.
Okay, so
Yes.
maybe that's where that came from. But like I didn't have like a definitive answer. It was
Right.
something I had to go back and like sit with and digest and come up with on my own, which I enjoy that perspective
Yeah.
because just like the friend telling me what I am, it would have probably been kind of similar to you telling me what I was, but and a lot of people want to be told what they are. Like
Yeah.
they don't want to have to figure it out
Give
for
me the easy
themselves.
answer. Yeah.
But I think the real challenge is to be able to go in armored with all the knowledge and be able to say, okay, this is why
Yeah.
or who you are or where are you relating to this. So tell me how this works. You talked about it briefly with the teams, but tell me how it looks to work with individuals coaching around the Enneagram.
So my coaching, is the foundation. Like coaching with individuals, the foundation is the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
And I will do, if people just want to figure out their type, I will just book a couple of sessions just to help them land on their type.
Okay.
What I really love doing is working with individuals on like a 3 to 6 month basis,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so that they can really go deeper because there's so much depth to the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also tie in, I'm also a certified facilitator for the 6 types of working genius, which is more strengths based. So I tie that in. And then we look at, your routines and rhythms and mindset. And so but the foundation is the Enneagram because understanding why you do what you do needs
Mm-hmm.
to be the basis for everything, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
so I love working with individuals. There's so much joy I get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And with my strengths of wonder and totally different things, but I'm really good at looking at it like a high level overview, like having
Mm-hmm.
a bigger picture, being able to see the bigger picture
Sure.
and look into it and hear from a person and like, okay, well, what if you tried this? Like, but really just a bigger picture perspective is one of my strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be really helpful for people,
Yeah.
with that, with the Enneagram as the foundation
Mm-hmm.
so that sometimes we're so zoned in on
Yeah.
this one little aspect of our life when it's hard to pull back and look at the bigger picture.
Sure.
And so but yeah, the Enneagram is definitely the foundation. We start with the Enneagram. When I start with coaching someone, we start with the Enneagram,
Yeah.
understanding your type, and just little by little introducing, because it's so deep. Like there's so many aspects of it
Mm-hmm.
that I think are all very important,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't overwhelm yourself in trying to learn all about it at
Yeah.
one time. So little by little, week by week, we just learn something new about it and learn something about yourself through the Enneagram.
So I have, when I do discovery calls with potential clients, one of the biggest things I have to explain is like how coaching, the way I do it, how it differs from therapy. So, and I guess that's kind of the question I'll ask does it feel more educational based for them just to continue to learn more about themselves in real time as things are happening? Or does it have a therapy like style to it, that type of thing?
It's a mix.
Okay.
It's definitely a mix.
Okay.
It's me teaching them a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
like one little aspect, and then helping them reflect and pull out,
Okay.
asking them questions.
Okay.
Um, so it's definitely a mix.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you said 3 to 6 months. Is that like an hour like what's the cadence?
You know, usually weekly, I
Okay.
think it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But I would definitely work with their schedule. I know coaches who work weekly and some who do every other week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of gauge that.
Yeah.
with the client to see what works best for them and their schedule.
I think it's great. I think especially working with teams. I mean, I actually have a client who I can't remember the personality testing that she used to coach, would go into organizations and teach them about it. But there's so much use. I said that earlier. There really, really is about Enneagram. And I feel like, especially if you have a group of employees who are younger, because it is so trendy,
Yes.
Enneagrams can be really, really helpful because most people already kind of understand it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I at least think women, for the most part, do.
Right.
Whereas a Myers Briggs or some other variant of testing might be a little over their head, where Enneagram could be a little more, oh, I'm familiar with that. Like
Yeah.
I know of the numbers and
Yes.
I can, follow a hashtag on
Yeah.
Instagram and get motivated, those types of things, which I think could be really, really helpful depending on what age demographic your
Right.
workforce is. But I love that. I love that. I only do individual coaching. Group coaching is something I have not dove into yet. So I commend you for that because that's holding space for a lot of people at one time. Um, but I think that's wonderful. You mentioned working genius. So tell me what that is.
So working genius is the 6 types of working genius. It's like it's a strengths-based
Okay.
framework. And kind of like strengths finders, if you've heard of strengths finders or
Mm-mm.
Gallup strengths. But there's 6 different working geniuses,
Okay.
and it's based on like how you work, like which stages of work do you
Mm-hmm.
thrive in.
Okay.
And so, any project, any job, I mean, all jobs are going to require all you to work in
Right.
all 6 geniuses. And it's not that you're not good at the ones that aren't your genius.
Mm-hmm.
It's which ones do you find the most joy and fulfillment in?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's wonder is the first genius,
Okay.
and then invention,
Okay.
and then discernment, and then galvanizing, then enablement, and then tenacity.
Mm-hmm.
And wonder starts up like at like the 30,000 foot like big picture view,
Mm-hmm.
and then tenacity goes all the way down to ground level, and they just go down to like ground level. And really, everyone has 2 working geniuses, and those are the areas and stages of work that they love, and they don't feel like work to them.
Mm-hmm.
They thrive in those. They enjoy them more, and they find more fulfillment in them. And then everyone has 2 competencies, and those are you're probably really good at those.
Yeah.
You're very skilled at those, but you're kind of like, meh, you don't find as much joy and fulfillment in them. And then everyone has 2 frustrations that cause them stress that they get frustrated by. Now, every job, you're going to have to work in all 6
Yeah.
of them at some point in your job, but hopefully you can find a way to work, at least balance it with your geniuses.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a strengths based, like the developer of it, the founder of it, he said it's 80% strengths and 20% personality. Whereas when I think of Enneagram, it's 80% personality, 20% strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find combining the 2 because I mean, I love the Enneagram. Like, we'll always love the Enneagram. Um, but how do we combine that with what we're good at, like
Mm-hmm.
our strengths?
Mm-hmm.
And both of those put together really helped me. I went through a really couple of years of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I remember going home one Friday evening, and I put my pajamas on, I ate dinner, I got in the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And other than to get up and eat and take a shower, I got back in the bed and binged watched like TV for like two and a half days, like
Mm-hmm.
basically, because I was so burned out. And by the end of that Sunday night, I was like, you're on your stress path. I was thinking about, okay, I know the Enneagram. What am I doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh, I was showing the characteristics of my stress path number. And I was like, and so the very next day, it really empowered me to go the next day, go into work and go to my manager and go, you have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I can't keep up this pace. I need help.
Yeah.
And then a few months later is when I discovered the working genius and the 6 types of working genius. And I I read the book. It's a book. And I read the book and then immediately went online to take the assessment. That one I do recommend taking an online
Okay,
assessment.
good to know.
And when I took the assessment, I was like, it just was like the last piece of the puzzle for me to see what had led to my burnout.
Yeah.
And what I needed to start doing to try to overcome the burnout. And so those two have been so influential in my own journey that's why I just love them so much and why I love coaching on
Yeah.
them and teaching about them and doing workshops with them. It's hard, like doing both. It's not hard. I love doing both, but it's kind of hard to market yourself when you do individual and group coaching. And so that's why I like, because I see the potential and the benefits, especially the Enneagram and the Working Genius. You can understanding that stress, what causes you stress, whether it's because you're not working in your strengths or whether it's because of your personality, and with the Enneagram for groups and teams, it helps you understand communication styles of each type. It helps you understand how each type moves about and interact with people, and their strengths and weaknesses as a leader.
Yeah.
And then you pull in the strengths with the Working Genius. To me, it's just a beautiful pairing.
Yeah. Well, and I think too with the Enneagram, it's difficult when you have multiple people. Side note, that should not pick up on the microphone, but we're just gonna roll with it. Because landscapers pulled up. Perfect timing. So I think for the Enneagram, when I'm hearing you talk about working with groups, it's a lot to juggle when you're like, okay, what number is she? Okay, how do I need to handle this situation? And while yes, if you're well versed on everybody, it does give you an upper hand, if you will.
Right.
But I think it's more introspective in that if you know that you're stressed out, you are that much more aware of your own patterns to keep them from happening. So I heard you talk about what I would call like a couch rot of a weekend. And I've had that happen to me. I've had it happen to clients, and it starts a spiral of like, oh my God, I'm so mad at myself. I just wasted a whole weekend. I got nothing accomplished. You could just continue beating yourself up in that moment. Or if you know, like for you, you knew you were in stress, you knew the only way to get out of it was to change the circumstance or the situation. And so you could do that, because if you weren't armed with that knowledge or that vocabulary, there's no telling how you would have handled however long after that.
It could have really spiraled into, to depression,
or just been called depression right at the jump, right? Like people, this is textbook depression. I need to go to the doctor and get on.
Yes.
When in reality, maybe it could have been, but also it might not be. And there might be a solution to get out of it.
Well, and it's empowering to know that, oh, I can do something about this. And so they both have been so life-changing for me to know that, oh, I don't have to be stuck here. And it can give me the confidence to go to a manager or whoever and say, this is what this is causing. I need help. But really, it also really helped me understand I have to lead myself well.
Yeah.
Because really, it doesn't matter who you lead. If you're not leading yourself well, you're not going to be able to lead other people well. And you're certainly not going to be able to do it with a minimum of stress.
Yeah.
And so really for me, understanding my personality through the Enneagram, my strengths through the Working Genius, it's helped me really become a better leader because I can lead myself well. I know I should be leading myself. I know if I'm getting to that point, I need to step back.
Yeah.
And I need to focus on myself. And that sounds so selfish, but I actually just did an Instagram story about this morning. Why is it counterintuitive, to step back and take care of ourselves first when we feel like we just need to keep going in that same direction, which we're just spinning our wheels.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's really informed why I coach and how I coach, because I want to lead myself well.
Yeah.
So that I can be a good leader for other people and lead them with less stress and not be so stressed out about every interaction, every task, everything, that goes along with that.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, everything starts with you, right? Everything is internal. We all get kind of wrapped up in our own heads. We think everything's about us, and everyone around us is feeling the same way about themselves. And so it can be, you've got to start with yourself first. But I do think too, like burnout to me is a great indicator of like not leading yourself, not only not leading yourself well, but not being authentic and not
Right.
having a ton of awareness that you're just kind of on autopilot. And being able to step back when you need to step back or recharge when you need to recharge. I just took like 2 months off of social media, which was way longer than I intended, but it was amazing,
Right.
right? And I would like start to beat myself up about it and then be like, no, it doesn't feel right.
Right.
So I'm going to give myself permission to pull back from it. Like that's okay. Um, and had I just pushed through that, I would have burned out.
Right.
I would have hated what I was doing. It would have like created this whole other problem. But instead of doing that, I realized, even though I probably wouldn't articulate it exactly the way I could with the Enneagram, I knew enough to know that I was in stress and the way I was showing up wasn't the way I wanted to show up. And so I
Right.
pulled back.
Yes.
So I think that that is a great kind of reference of, and it was, I mean, shortly after we met, so maybe subconsciously I was kind of playing into it. But I do, any way that we can know ourselves better, we can move through the world easier and more productive. We can have stronger, better relationships or profession, like
All of the
nothing
things.
bad comes from it, right? It
Right.
can be very confronting. I
Oh,
will not
yes.
negate that. I mean, it
It's
can be
not
very,
comfortable.
yeah, it can be very well, and like sitting in discomfort is how you grow.
Exactly.
If it were easy, everyone would do it. There's a reason why everyone doesn't.
Right.
I've had it come up with a lot of coaching clients of like, I get you're uncomfortable. I get this sucks, but we have to move through it. Like this
Right.
is part of it. And my like tagline of coaching is I will light a fire under your ass. It's your choice whether you blow it out or you fan the flame. But I'm
Right.
going to make you uncomfortable. Like that's the
Yeah.
point of it is I'm not here to hold your hand and tell you you're doing a perfect job. I will definitely, celebrate
Right.
and all of those things when you've shown up for yourself and so on, but I'm also here to like mirror back what I'm seeing. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable.
Right.
And so I've got to like really read the person I'm working with to understand like how it's going to be taken. I only work with women, so there's, play into that as well. But um I'm not I'm here to be your cheerleader, but I'm not here to be your yes woman,
Right.
right? So it can be challenging, but that's the point.
Exactly.
Is that's how you grow.
And
So,
nothing worth what was I heard someone say, nothing worth doing was ever downhill.
oh, I've not heard that version. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what's the other one that I know? Oh God, I'm blanking right now, but I've not heard the downhill one, but I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's always going to be a challenge. And that's
Right.
why that's your payment for the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
Is like moving through the discomfort. Um, I was saying to a client a couple of days ago of like that standing at the ledge of a cliff, like to jump off into the water, safe distance, all of the things. Before you jump, there's so many things going through your head about like, what if I'm terrified, I'm scared. And then the moment you make that decision to jump, it's euphoric, right? And then it's like, why did I wait so long?
Right.
Why did it take me so long? It was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And the next thing you know, you're running uphill to jump again because you got over. But that part of like walking up to the ledge and actually jumping is so hard. So, so hard.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, if you don't have someone to hold you accountable and kind of encourage you, you'll stay there
Yeah.
forever and you'll
Yeah.
turn around and you'll go back and you'll
Yeah.
never jump.
You have to go through it.
Yeah.
You have to go through it. There's this little cartoon I've seen, and um it's like this miner, and he's like with the
Uh
pickaxe, and
huh.
he's like picking away,
Yeah.
pounding away at it, and then, this mountain or whatever, and then you see he's like giving up,
Mm
and
hmm.
he's just dejected, and he's turning around, and if he just gone a little bit further, you see the gold.
Mm hmm.
And so it's that kind of thing. There's no way to go around it.
Mm-hmm.
If you stuff it down, and that's the other thing. I mean, if you stuff it down, you're just going to physically, you could cause yourself more,
Mm-hmm.
issues, because the body keeps the score.
Yeah. It's a good
So,
book.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have to go through it. You have to acknowledge it. And that's one thing I think, especially using the Enneagram and understanding why you're
Mhm.
doing it, naming it helps you get through it.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I totally believe that. Oh my gosh, this has been so great. And now I'm like, okay, I need to dive back into my packet and like highlight all of the things that were coming up for me over the past 2 months. So, Amy, this has been such a pleasure. I do want to have you share something from your hype list. And I was telling Amy before we started recording what the hype list is and how all of that kind of came to and how we named it the hype squad. So I give this assignment to a lot of clients, which is just a way of like reminding yourself how badass you actually are, and because we don't remember on a daily basis the things we've actually accomplished. And also, like the whole idea of being full of yourself and bragging is such a negative connotation
Yeah.
associated with it. And I wanted to kind of flip that. So, I want you to brag about yourself for a minute and celebrate something
Hmm.
that you're really proud of accomplishment wise.
I don't know that it would be accomplishments, um, but I definitely say I am most proud of the perspective I bring
Mm-hmm.
to things because I can see that I have this really unique, this does sound like bragging. I really have this unique ability to see things from like a big picture, higher level view,
Mm-hmm.
but I also am really good at seeing the details.
Mm.
Like it's a really unique mix. I've always wondered why I had that, and I always thought I was really weird for a while for that. But I think it's just that perspective of having the big picture, 30,000 foot view of something, but also being able to see the details and what's missing, and like, how do we, what details do we need to focus on, and what, what details are missing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had a situation recently where I was helping with a project, and it just was not going well. It
Mm-hmm.
was just not. Like we were just it was just hard. And I finally sat someone down and I was like, "Show me step by step by step."
Mm-hmm.
And when they showed me they got to this one step, I was like, "That's where we're missing it."
Mm-hmm.
So I have this, and then I was able to come up, okay, with the details, like how do
Yeah.
we do this? What's the process? What do we need to do? And so, yeah, I think that I have this unique ability to have a huge big picture view of something, but also have a very ground level detailed view at the same time.
Mm.
And so I would say that's kind of what I'm learning to appreciate about myself
Yeah.
and be a little more vocal when I'm in a situation that could really use that. So that's the hardest thing for me is pushing. I'm not pushy. I'm not a pushy
Yeah.
salesperson. I'm not pushy. Is being able to say, "Hey, I think I might can help with this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you show me?" And then being able to have that, that unique perspective of the big picture and the ground level
Yeah.
perspective.
Well, and that makes you an amazing coach, especially with teams. I could really see how that could really be highlighted in a team scenario, being able to identify exactly what's happening. And also, I feel like I would assume you probably have some empath qualities as well.
Yes, that is
I
one
do,
of my strengths,
yeah, I do
actually.
find that coaches, good coaches, I should say, typically have a lot of empath qualities, and that they can read the energy from the person before. When I first started coaching, I'm definitely an empath, and when I first started coaching, I was a little concerned about virtual sessions and how I could hold space for people and pick up on energies and all that. And it's all the same.
Oh, yes.
It's
Yeah.
all the same, which I did not believe would be the case. And I actually had a client last week, I think it was, and I was like, look, I don't know what's going on, but your energy's off today. You're not really even hearing what I'm saying. You're not really even speaking in a way that I'm familiar with. So after this call, I want you to decompress and kind of like reset, because
Right.
something's happening here and it's in one ear and out the other, and kind of calling that out and mirroring. And she, like, the next day, she's like, oh my, you called me out. You were so right. Here's what I've discovered after journaling and figuring all this stuff. And so it's, good coaches have to have some sort of empath qualities. And I do think that what you're saying about seeing the big picture and then the small details is definitely
Yes.
feels empathic to me.
Yes. Yeah.
But I
Definitely. That is one of my, like on the Gallup's Clifton Strengths Finders, empath is
mm-hmm.
one of my
It's a
strengths.
superpower.
Yes. And I'm a highly sensitive person, so I
Mm-hmm.
pick up on people's moods and people's energy and, and sometimes have to extricate myself
I
from
was
that
about to say
energy.
introverted
Yes.
qualities. I feel the same way. And it is depending on how much empath you have in your system. Um, Social environments can be really, really draining. It's
Yes.
one of the reasons I haven't really dug into group coaching is because I don't know that I can handle,
Yeah.
and how many people can I handle? I can handle one person really, and even then some, it's a lot of energy to hold
Yeah.
space for.
I find with the group and team coaching, it energizes me more than I anticipated it ever would, which is really, really interesting. But I think it's because I am so passionate
Mm-hmm.
about helping people understand themselves a little
Yeah,
bit deeper. And so that kind of makes up for,
sure.
for how draining it can be.
Well, I think too, depending on what the context is of what you're coaching. So I do some business coaching as well. And I think if I were in a group scenario with just business coaching,
Oh, yeah.
I would also be
Yeah. Yeah.
energized and engaged by it. But if it were more personal life coaching, that's where I would struggle because that's can be more expansive, if
Yeah.
you will. So I relate to that. Maybe I've got some one in me too. Maybe is that a one thing? I don't know.
Ones and sixes do have a lot in common.
Okay, so there we go.
They
Ding
do.
ding.
A lot of the characteristics, they do have a lot of characteristics in common.
And that's the thing too, is like, and you said something earlier about you'll have a lot in common, and that's a perfect scenario of like, it's like when you look at the circle diagram and you've got your overlap, like you can
Yeah.
have overlap with a lot of people. It doesn't mean you're necessarily the
Yeah.
exact same thing as them.
Well, and we're not, um, with the Enneagram, it's like if there were a perfect person,
Mm-hmm.
they would embody all of the positive
Mm-hmm.
traits of all of those nine
Yeah.
types. So we're all going to identify with lots of the different types.
Mm-hmm.
There's just one that's going to be your main one.
Mm. I could like spiral about Enneagrams. I mean, and we could just keep going. I'm going to put all of the details of how to get in contact with Amy in the show notes. I'm so happy you came.
Thank you
This
so
has
much for
been
having me.
lovely. I'm so glad we finally got to do this.
Yes.
So thank you for listening and getting hyped with us, and be kind to yourselves. Goodbye. That's it.